hunter almost all my life. Some of the earliest memories I have are of my dad and I going out into the woods to hunt white-tailed deer. I'm not a rich man or a well-traveled one, but I know the woods like the back of my hand. I know how to track an animal, and I can field dress it too. It's my hobby, my only hobby really. And recently, it's become a source of food for me and my family, since everything seems to be going up in price. I can't control the stock market, but I can at least make sure that our freezer is stocked with venison for the year. It was because of economic problems that some of my friends and neighbors have been joining me. It's been nice. Roger, Mike, and his daughter Katie have been good companions to have along. Katie was a little squeamish at first about hunting and killing animals. She seems a lot more interested in the tracking aspect of it and foraging. I know which plants and roots and things in the forest are good to eat, and she took to that like she had been born to it. It was kind of sweet, father and daughter leaving the woods at the end of the day with their spoils, one with meat and the other with roots. Everything would end up in a pot later. This weekend, we were going on another hunt together. Deer season was coming to an end, and we all wanted to stock up for the season, so we'd have something frozen for winter. "Thanks for taking us along with you again, Bobby," Roger said as he shrugged into his hunting gear. We were all wearing the standard things you wear when going on a hunt. Camo, but we had our orange vests on in case some trigger-happy hunter had a hard time telling the difference between a deer and a full-grown man. Mistakes did happen sometimes. Not a problem at all. Honestly, it's been nice to have the company. Debbie doesn't really care for hunting, and Trevor and Carter are too young to take along with me, I said with a smile. And it was true. I had missed being able to go hunting with anyone since my dad and stepmom had retired to Florida. They were all good company, and they were always welcome to join me. "Bobby, check out this new book I found on foraging in the wild. I got it from Amazon, but I was thinking I'd be able to find some things today while we're out in the woods," Katie chirped. She had appeared in front of me as if she had teleported. She waved a book in front of my face like an excited child in Christmas. "Katie, leave him alone. The man is more interested in deer than pinecone seeds, or whatever it is you guys keep foraging for," Mike shouted over his shoulder as he zipped up his hunting vest. "Mike, it's okay. It's honestly refreshing, seeing a teenager excited about nature than being knee-deep in TikToks or snaps or whatever it is that teens do nowadays." I winked at Katie as I spoke. She rolled her eyes at me, but she was smiling. "Actually, I put everything on Instagram when we get home. I have over 3K followers now." She snipped back as she tucked her book into her knapsack. That did make me laugh. Katie was a good kid. Having her around was almost like a prelude to what it'd be like when I brought my boys with me. I just hoped they had the same passion for hunting that I did. "Was it supposed to rain today?" Roger called out to the group. I shook my head and looked to the sky. Everything seemed clear, but there was the smell of rain in the air. I had checked the forecast, and it had promised a nice sunny day today. "I don't think so. I checked the forecast, but you know how the weather is. It's got a mind of its own," I shrugged. "I just don't want to get my new rifle wet. It was expensive. I bought it as an early birthday present to myself." Roger patted the butt of his new hunting rifle tenderly. "Well, I'd hate for that to happen. If it does start raining, we'll just head home. But let's get a move on anyway. We gotta get to the hunting hut and it's covered at least." I had hunted on this land for years. It was owned by one of my dad's friends, and because we used the land so often, I had built a treehouse in the woods that I used as a hunting hut. I never got to have a treehouse as a kid, so I was living my dreams out now as an adult. It was a quick 20-minute walk to the hut from the road, but in the heat and bogged down with equipment, we were all sweating by the time we arrived. I bagged many deer using that hut, and I was proud of it. "All there," Mike said, as he sat down his bag and looked up the wooden ladder. "If you ever get rich, Bobby, please tell me you'll install an elevator on this thing," he wheezed. If If I ever get rich, I'll just be buying my meat at the store like everyone else, I laughed. We all got settled into the hut and got ready for the day. Katie was quietly reading her book, and the rest of us were waiting on bagging ourselves at least one more buck before the season ended. The day was stretching on, and I started to feel my mind wander. In case no one ever told you, hunting can be pretty boring. There's a lot of waiting around sometimes. Beyond my field of vision, I heard some rustling coming from the brush. We all heard it and trained our rifles on that spot. Katie put down her book and sat silently. I had my rifle sight trained on the spot where I heard the rustling when the creature emerged. My stomach dropped at the sight of it. For a second, I couldn't really register what I was seeing. My mind went immediately to a bear. It was large enough to be one, and covered in coarse-looking dark fur. But it wasn't a bear. Dear God, I wish it was a bear. It stood there on two hind legs. Its face was that of a large wolf. Its arms, because that's what they were, ended in paws that were a terrifying blend of human and canine. It stood there, snout held high, and sniffed the air. It was such a casual gesture it seemed almost comical. "Bobby, what the hell is that thing?" Roger squeaked. The thing's body jerked to the sound of my friend's voice, and its eyes locked onto mine. I'd never been stared down by an animal, but dear God, that thing's gaze went right through me, and my stomach dropped further. I'd never felt more vulnerable in my life, and that was even armed with my hunting rifle and surrounded by friends who were equally armed. It growled, a low and reverberating sound that I heard in my bones, and it took a step forward, then another. Katie screamed. It was so unexpected that I almost lost a grip on my rifle. To the men to my left and right, it had the opposite effect. Roger fired a shot that went wide and hit the dirt at the thing's feet. Mike didn't miss, but it wasn't a killing hit. His shot glanced off the thing's arm. It let out a yowl and darted back into the brush, and I lost sight of it. Then it let out an enraged howl that turned my insides to liquid. Did I hit it? Did I kill it? Mike sputtered, his hands shaking as he gripped his rifle. No, you just hit the thing in its arm, I stammered, feeling my own hands start shaking. Where is it? Did it scare it off at least? Mike shouted in my ear. His eyes were wide, and I saw the panic in them. I'm sure they mirrored my own. Behind us, Katie was curled into a ball, looking at the spot where the thing had vanished. Daddy, please, I want to go home. I want to go home now. Her voice was shaking, but considering what we had all just witnessed, she sounded almost normal. I don't know if that's a good idea. That thing is out there. We might want to wait a while. We have some safety up here in the treehouse, I stammered. I didn't drop my gun or turn my head while I spoke. I kept my rifle trained on the spot where that thing had disappeared into the brush. Why would we stay put? We have guns. We scared it off. Let's run to the trucks while we can. We're 3 grown men with rifles. We can handle it, Roger sputtered. We're 3 scared grown men and a teenage girl. Scared people don't make good decisions, I snapped back. I'm not scared, Roger snapped back to me, though we both knew that was a lie. I'm leaving. I gotta get Katie to safety. You guys come or don't, but we're leaving, Mike said, gesturing to Katie, who crawled to his side and wrapped her arms around her dad. I was in a tough spot. I didn't want to get down on the ground where that thing was. But I also wasn't going to let my friend and his daughter go out there without someone watching their back. The choice was being made for me. Okay, we'll all go together. If we stick together, we'll be fine. I was shaking, and not from the cold, but from the adrenaline flooding my system. We crept down the ladder one at a time. Everyone kept their rifles trained on the trees around us. Katie was the last one down, and she clung to her dad like he was a lifeline. And he was. She didn't have a weapon on her. Without us, she might be a sitting duck. Okay, we're all down. Let's start walking. Just keep your eyes open and we'll get back to the trucks and get out of here, and we'll call the police, I said, keeping my voice steady. And tell them what? Some dogman is loose in the woods? Roger shot back. We gotta tell them something. This is hunting season. People out here are unaware. What if someone has kids with them? You want more kids wandering around these woods with that thing on the loose? I shot back at him. He had nothing to say to that, but kept his eyes on the terrain around us. I wasn't going to not report this. I couldn't have innocent lives be endangered by my inaction. We walked slowly, carefully, and there was nothing from the trees around us. Maybe it had been scared off, whatever it was. It burst from the underbrush and charged right at Katie. We all fired. We all missed. It swiped at Katie, and she fell back screaming. Her father turned and shot at the thing retreating back. I took a shot at it too, but I know that I missed. Katie, are you okay? Where are you? Mike whirled around, looking for his daughter. Where is she? Did it take her? I screamed back, looking everywhere for the teenager. No, she ran off in the opposite direction. It scared her, and she ran. Mike was shouting and trembling. Then we have to go after her. She's a sitting duck out here alone. I took off in the direction Mike had pointed. He was right behind me, and surprisingly so was Roger. In the distance, we could hear her panicked screams as she dove headfirst through the underbrush and plant life around us. She was an easy target for that creature. Everything in the woods could hear her. Katie, come back. You're going the wrong way. The trucks are this way, Mike shouted after his child. She was either too far away to hear us or too panicked to register what we were saying. She kept running, though we had now caught sight of her through the trees. We kept up as best we could. I'm not in the best shape. None of us were, and adrenaline can only make up for physical limitations for so long. But still, we were gaining ground. In the distance, there was another clearing, and a small wooden house stood there. It looked like an old-time log cabin, nothing prefab or modern about it. We must have run farther than we thought, because I had never seen that cabin before, but it must be the property adjacent to my friend's property. We were way off course, and I doubted we'd be able to find the trucks at this point. Katie was making a straight line to the front of the cabin. I could see the panic in the way she ran. That tiny house offered up a tiny chance of a haven, and Katie was taking it. She ran to the door and then through it. It must not have been locked, and she disappeared inside. Katie, Mike called out. His breathing didn't sound good. Soon we were at the front door, and then we were inside. Roger stumbled in last, red in the face and looking as panicked as we all felt. Whose cabin is this? He blurted out, eyes wide and taking in the surroundings. I shook my head. I couldn't speak yet. I was panting like a dog, and I swear I tasted blood. Dear God, if I get out of this alive, I promise I'll take up jogging. Katie was huddled in the middle of the floor. She had taken off her coat and was shivering. I had no idea why she'd taken off her coat. It must have been a stress reaction. She was holding on to her knees and rocking back and forth as she looked up at us with a terrified expression. I don't know where we are. I've never seen this place before, I stammered as I caught my breath. Maybe they have a phone? Mike blurted out, looking around the room. When was the last time you saw a house that had a landline? Besides, this place isn't even hooked up to electricity. Did you notice that? Roger barked out a reply. And he was right. I hadn't noticed in our mad dash into the place, but it was completely dark inside, the kind of dark you only get when there's no electricity at all. The only light provided was from a tiny metal stove and a wood-burning fireplace, and even that wasn't much. But we're safe. There's a door, and it looks solid. And someone lives here, and they might be able to help. I stuttered, feeling a wave of exhaustion hit me now that the adrenaline was starting to wear off. Unless that thing got the people who live here, Roger spat. Katie started crying at that, and Mike went to comfort her. She was trembling as her dad wrapped her up in his arms. My poor Katie girl, don't worry, we'll get out of this. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise. He rubbed her back as she cried. Roger pressed a hand to his face and let out a long sigh. "It's too bad you can't make that promise for all of us, huh?" he muttered. "Now's not the time for that, Roger. It really isn't," I shot back at him. That kind of talk wasn't going to help us at all. Mike didn't say anything. Either he chose to ignore Roger, or he hadn't heard him. It didn't matter either way. I decided to take stock of the situation. I busied myself looking around the small cabin. And it was true. There was no phone or landline or any sign of anything electrical. It was a completely off-grid cabin. I felt like I had stepped back into the late 1800s. It even smelled terrible here. Between the smoke and lack of ventilation, it was already getting unbearable. There were also no weapons, besides a few blunt-looking kitchen knives.
"Who are you?"
a voice said softly from the shadows. I jumped. Katie screamed, and Roger stumbled backwards and brought up his rifle to the spot where we had heard the voice. In the corner, something stirred and then sat up. What I had mistaken for just a pile of blankets was actually a sleeping person, surrounded by blankets. It was a woman. At least I thought it was. Age had blurred the person's face so much I wasn't able to ascertain the gender. The hair was long, but that didn't mean much. And the voice was soft and strong, but sounded neither masculine or feminine.
"I said, who are you? This is my house, and I don't recall inviting any of you into my home,"
the voice said. The tone was even and measured, and I could still hear the power and anger behind it. "I'm so sorry. We are in some kind of trouble. We're being hunted by some kind of wolf. My friend's daughter Katie got scared and ran right into your cabin. We just needed to get somewhere safe." I stumbled over my words, and I was hoping that this person would turn out to be a woman and not a man. I didn't need to insult them more than I did by entering their home. The woman's eyes narrowed, and she licked her dry lips before speaking.
"You're talking about the Dogman? He's always been around these parts, schooling about, hunting the stragglers and whatnot,"
she explained, her voice gravelly and drawn out. "What? So you know this thing? How dangerous is it?" Mike asked from the floor, still holding on to Katie. The woman looked at him and licked her lips again before answering.
"Very, very dangerous,"
was all she said. "Do you have a phone?" Roger called out. He was still holding his rifle up, and it was still pointed at the woman.
"No, never had a phone. Don't want one. Don't need one."
Her voice was hoarse as she looked at Roger with disapproval.
"Are you so afraid of an old woman in her home that you must point a weapon at her? Have some common sense, boy,"
she said, her voice raising a few octaves in indignity. Roger lowered his rifle but didn't apologize. He looked pissed off for some reason, as though this woman was making him angry. He was practically bristling. Roger had always had a bad temper, and with all the fear and adrenaline he needed some kind of outlet, and it looked like he was focusing on the old woman for that reason. "Relax, Roger. We did break into her house. Let's just all stay calm and we'll get out of this together," I said slowly. Roger shot me an angry look and didn't say anything, but he backed up to the wall and leaned against it. He eyed us all warily. "Is there anyone else who might know you're here? That will come to check on you. Maybe they'll have a cell phone or something?" I asked the old woman.
"My great-great-great-grandson, Jethro, has one of them things. He's out hunting right now. He should be back soon,"
the lady chortled. Then she broke down into an unleafy-sounding coughing fit. "So he's out there with that thing running around? How do we know he's not dead?" Roger shot back at the woman.
"The Dogmen don't bother him none. I have my ways, the ways that keep him from coming to this cabin, or hunting my kin,"
the woman retorted. She sounded indignant. Roger perked up at her admission. "So, you have a way to keep this thing away? Give it to us, and we'll leave." Roger took a step forward with a manic gleam in his eye. The woman cowered deeper into her blankets. As Roger approached her, I took a step forward and got between them. Everyone calmed down. "Roger, go stand against the wall." "I'm so sorry," But if it's true that you have a way to keep the Dogman away, can you share it with us? Please, I can pay you. We have a girl with us, and she really needs to get home safe, I said, trying to placate everyone. The woman looked at me, and then to Katie, who was looking hopefully at the old woman. Her gaze softened, and she looked up to Mike.
So, this is your girl? Katie, you said her name was...
She asked softly. Yes, and I really do want to keep her safe. So if you have a way to do that, I'd appreciate you sharing it with us, Mike spoke, his voice all steady diplomacy.
I had a granddaughter named Katie once. Beautiful girl. She certainly was a light in my life.
The woman's voice trembled as she spoke.
I'll help you, but once I do, you will need to leave my home. Is that understood? I want no payment from you. Only the promise you'll leave me in peace and never come back.
She looked at each of us in turn as she spoke. Yes, I think we can all agree to that. I agreed for the entire group. So how are you going to keep the Dogman thing away from us? Are you saying a prayer? Roger said with sarcasm. I shot him a look. I'd take anything at this point, whether it was a prayer or a bazooka. Behind us, the front door opened and someone stepped inside. It was a young man, probably around Katie's age, but it was hard to tell. He was wearing some tattered cloth, a t-shirt, and jeans that had seen better days. He had a canvas sack slung over his back and some kind of gun tucked into his waistband. Roger brought up his rifle and aimed it at the boy. We stared in shock at Roger, taking a split second to process what was going on.
Don't point that at Jethro,
the old lady yelled. The boy, Jethro, turned and looked at us each in turn. His face had a horrible look of confusion on it as he took in the scene before him. Then he saw Roger with the rifle pointed at him. He dropped his sack and pulled out his pistol all in one smooth motion. Who are you? Where's my grandma? He stuttered, his hand shaking as he pointed the pistol at Roger. It's okay. We're not a danger to you. We're running from a creature that was trying to kill us. We saw your cabin and ran inside, I yelled out, trying to explain. The boy's eyes darted to me. They were wide with fear. Tell that man not to point that gun at me, he yelled back. I'm not dropping my rifle until you drop yours, Roger yelled back. You're in my house, pointing a gun at me, the boy responded indignantly.
Don't point that gun at my grandson,
the woman yelled again. She lurched out of her cocoon of blankets, and I had to stare at her for a moment. She was so thin and old, she resembled a skeleton more than a person, even with clothes on. A shudder ran through my body at the sight of her. I'd never seen anyone so old or unhealthy looking who wasn't a corpse. Grandma, you shouldn't be walking, Jethro called out, his eyes locked onto his grandma. Roger took that moment to step forward and put his rifle right under the boy's chin. Jethro's eyes flicked back to Roger and his eyes went wider. I said, drop it, Roger said through gritted teeth. The boy trembled, but didn't drop his weapon. I saw his finger start to squeeze on the trigger, and so did Roger. The rifle blast was deafening in that small space. The boy fell backward, his body slumped dead against the floor, his neck obliterated with the rifle shot. The woman shrieked. So did Katie, Mike, and me, as the sound from the shot faded. What did you do? What did you do? Mike screamed at Roger. He put himself in front of Katie as if to shield her, and Katie was shockingly silent. The old woman let out a wail and fell to the ground, cradling the boy's body as blood leaked out onto the wooden floor.
My boy, what have you done?
The woman shrieked. We need to leave, Roger shouted. He lurched forward and grabbed me by the arm, shoving me towards the door. I moved quickly as the shock and stress washed over me. This couldn't be happening. Mike and Katie moved to the door as well, moving slowly. Mike was dragging Katie. She stood transfixed, watching the boy die on the floor. Shouldn't we help him? She said softly. I was sure she was in shock too, but her voice sounded so normal for a second that it snapped me out of my reverie. I moved to the boy, starting to kneel down and offer what help I could. The blood was everywhere. The old woman's thin, ragged clothing was already soaking up the red coppery stuff. Her tiny, frail body shuddered with the power of her sobs, and she looked at me, her eyes boring into me as she screamed again.
You did this. You all did this. I'll call Pumpkinhead down on you all. I'll summon that demon, and he'll drag you all to hell.
She spit at me as she spoke. I didn't even try to wipe the spittle from my face as I stood back up and ran for the door. At the moment, I'd rather face the Dogman than that woman. She scared me. Her words went straight into my soul, and I realized I was crying. Silent tears trailed down my cheeks as we ran out into the yard. What did you do that for? Mike was screaming into Roger's face. Roger was looking stunned, but he looked into Mike's face with an almost stern expression as he answered. He had a gun to my throat. What did you expect me to do? His voice was calm and measured, as if he were explaining something to a child. We were the ones in his house. That lady was going to help us, and you shot her grandson, Mike spat back at him. Roger backed away, shaking his head. I was defending myself. Anyone would say that. You can't blame me for defending myself, Roger said, anger creeping into his voice. It's too late now. We might as well run for the trucks and hope to make it. Keep our backs to each other like before and watch out for each other, I snapped at everyone. The shock was leaving my body, and I had the sudden cold realization we were back out in the woods with absolutely no cover or shelter. I brought up my rifle. Just our luck, that thing would sneak up behind us right then. What did the old lady say? About the Pumpkinhead, Katie asked softly. She hadn't spoken in so long that the sound of her voice was jarring. I shook my head. I have no idea, Katie. I think she was in shock. We do need to get back to the trucks and call for an ambulance and the police. They can shoot the Dogman, and that old woman needs some help, I answered her. Roger shot me a dark look when I mentioned the police, but I didn't care. They needed to be here. We needed to explain everything to them. Then let's go now. We can all make it if we stick together, Mike said, holding on to Katie with one hand and his gun with the other. That Pumpkinhead, that name scared me. I don't know what it is. I think it's really bad, Katie sniveled, fresh tears running down her cheeks. Don't worry about it, Katie. She was an old woman rambling. We don't have anything to fear from something that's the main ingredient of a pumpkin spice latte. Roger snapped. He might have been trying to reassure her or just sound brave. Let's just start walking. Keep together. We're all going to get home, I said roughly. I wanted out of here, and once I was home, I was never going hunting again. We started walking. We were lost, but no one had the energy to admit it. The adrenaline and shock finally wore off enough that a half an hour later, Roger turned to us and practically spat. We're all lost. Can we just admit that? Roger looked at each of us in turn, but focused his eyes on me the longest. I felt like saying something terrible, but decided against it. It wasn't worth wasting the energy. I looked around, trying to get my terrified brain to think rationally. What if we fire our rifles in the air? The sound might attract someone, and they'll come to help, I chimed in, breaking the silence. Will that even work? It's hunting season. There's gunshots all the time, and we'd waste bullets, and the monster might hear us, Katie said softly, her body pressed against her dad's. She was right, and if we were far enough in the woods like I expected, then it would be doubly wasteful. We might as well retrace our steps. It's getting dark, and we're going to lose the light, Mike said with the measured tone of a father explaining something to his children. I think that might be our best bet. I found myself nodding at what Mike had said. That's so stupid. We've been walking for an hour. If we backtrack now, we might as well give up. That thing is back there, and that old lady. The boy's gun is still in that house. You think that old lady won't hesitate to use it if she sees us again? Roger glared at all of us with poorly disguised hatred. He was probably right, but I was desperate enough at that point that I was willing to try anything. Behind us came the sound of footsteps. They were heavy and slow and methodical. I could hear the chirping of insects, where before there were none. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. There was something about that sound that made me feel weak and small, and I hated it. And then it stepped out from the trees. It wasn't the Dogman. This was something different. It was taller than a man, though it was shaped like one and bipedal like the Dogman had been. It was hairless and genderless. Its long limbs ended in sharp claws. Its eyes were a sickly white that somehow still glowed with a malevolent intelligence. Its face was sickeningly human, and its lips peeled back into a mockery of a smile. Someone screamed. I don't know who, but we all fired our rifles at the same time. I think mine hit, but I couldn't be sure. The thing's body jerked back from the impact of the bullets and let out a strained, human-sounding scream of frustration and pain. It didn't go down, but took another step forward towards us. Roger ran first, breaking away from us and running back the way we had come. Roger, no. Come back. Don't run away from the group, I shouted at him. He disappeared quickly into the woods. The thing looked at him with disinterest before focusing its attention back on us. Mike shoved Katie behind him just as the thing lurched forward with frightening speed, swiping at Mike with its claws. Mike fired once more before going down. He missed. I fired as well, hitting the thing in the side, but all it did was grunt as it grabbed Mike with its clawed hands. It lifted him up like he was a baby, like he was nothing. Katie, run, baby. Get out of here, Mike screeched out. The monster dug its claws into Mike's eyes. He let out a long, pained shriek before the creature ripped his head apart with a satisfied wail. Katie screamed, but stood where she was, transfixed by the sight of her father's death. She stared, not comprehending at the thing, as it started to eviscerate her father's corpse. I leaped forward and grabbed her arm, yanking her forward and into the woods after Roger. We'll run back to the cabin, barricade ourselves in. It's going to be okay, I huffed as we both ran. But it was never going to be okay. I needed her to stay with me. If she ran off, or didn't keep up, I wouldn't be able to carry her. I'd have to make a stand, and then we'd both be dead. She kept up as best she could. Her movements were robotic and methodical. She must be deeply in shock or disassociating. We ran for as long as we could in the fading light, but we were already exhausted, and we didn't last long. It was a long way back to the cabin. Eventually, we were stumbling around in the dark, trying to find our way back to the only sanctuary we could find. The moon was full, and that helped, but it would also help anything else out there find us too. We finally came upon the clearing with the small cabin. I let out a pained yelp of joy as we staggered to the door. Katie hesitated and burst into tears again. She's not going to let us in. We killed her grandson. She's the one who called that thing after us, she whimpered. I didn't have the strength or time to argue with her, but I pushed the door open and we both fell inside, our energy gone. The body was still there, but it had been covered with a blanket for which I was thankful. And before us was Roger. He was kneeling over the body of the old woman. He looked up at us, and he gave me an almost sheepish expression, like he'd been caught doing something that he wasn't supposed to. That's when I realized the old woman was unconscious, and her breathing was labored. I saw blood on her head that was oozing out of a fresh wound across her forehead. Roger, what did you do? I wheezed as I fought to catch my breath. I'm getting us out of this. What do you think I'm doing? His voice shook slightly as he stood up and moved away from the woman on the ground. Is she dead? Katie asked softly. She was inching forward towards the woman and reaching out to her hand. Roger darted forward and kicked her hand away. Katie let out a tiny cry and snatched her hand away and looked at Roger with a pained expression. I just wanted to see if she was okay, Katie stammered, her eyes filling with tears again. Whatever you think you're doing to help Roger, you need to stop it right now. Hurting anyone else isn't going to help us, I yelled at him. Roger glared down at me. I don't think so. I think hurting this old woman is the only thing that's going to keep us alive. And when we're done, we're burning down this cabin and forgetting this day ever happened. Roger said it so nonchalantly, I thought I'd completely misheard him. What are you talking about? I shot back at him. She called that thing down on us. That Pumpkinhead, she confessed everything. Before she passed out, I made her call that thing here, to us, to kill the Dogman. And then we can all go home. Roger looked at me like he was talking about the weather, not about two impossible creatures battling to the death. You're utterly insane, was all I managed to sputter. I held Katie close to me. She was shivering and staring at Roger with a wide-eyed and shocked expression. She seemed unable to speak. From outside the cabin, we heard a howl. Too close for comfort. Katie shivered harder against me. I moved us both to the opposite side of the cabin, as far from the door and windows as we could be. I put her behind me and trained the rifle at the door. I was ready to shoot whatever came at us. That won't do any good. Not against those things, Roger said, again, so casually it was infuriating. Yeah, well, it makes me feel a whole hell of a lot better, I shouted back at him. But the Dogman can't get in. The old woman said he can't get near the cabin. Katie spoke from behind me. I hadn't expected her to speak, so I jumped a little when she did, but she was right. Oh, I had the old woman remove the protection spell, the incantation or whatever it was. It'll all be over soon, though, so don't worry, Roger said with that same eerie calm. From outside, the howl came again, and the sounds of insects and cicadas grew stronger as well. My stomach dropped, and I felt sick. The demon was nearby, too. If luck was on our side, they'd fight outside. Maybe we could watch this spectacular supernatural showdown from the relative safety of these wooden walls. But we were never lucky. At least, not tonight. There was a loud, thundering shudder as something massive pounded on the door. Katie whimpered, Roger laughed, and my heart fluttered as I brought up my rifle again. For a second, I had a hope that the wooden door would hold, but then it flew open and in walked the Dogman. It was huge. I got a sense it would be, but now that it was inside the cabin, I had a real estimate of its size. It was bigger than the door frame that it managed to squeeze into. It let out a low growl and huff, its eyes immediately drawn to the dead body of Jethro. It must have been the blood that was drawing it. It crouched low and approached the body, keeping its eyes trained on us. I didn't shoot, not yet, not until I could get a good shot. If I could hit its head or neck, we might be saved. I had only a few rounds left, and I needed to make them count. Katie whimpered again, but we didn't move as we watched the Dogman move the sheet back from the body, a surprisingly human move. It sniffed the body and the blood, a satisfied growl issuing from deep within its throat. It stood upright, moving so quickly it startled me. Still, I didn't shoot. It stood and faced the front door of the cabin. Its fur bristled, raised, as the cicada's sound grew stronger. That's when the Pumpkinhead appeared. It was larger than the Dogman itself, if that were even possible. It fit into the cabin door, like a child stuffing a toy into a small dollhouse. Its face was demonic, strangely human, and it snapped at the Dogman and advanced on the beast. The Dogman looked back and leapt at the demon, kicking it back into the wall. The whole structure shuddered as they hit. We all screamed. Roger had moved beside us, out of fear and safety. Shoot it, he screamed into my ear. I took my shot, still aiming for the Dogman. I hit it in the chest and it grunted, turning long enough to snarl in my direction before turning back to the demon. Shoot it again, Roger yelled into my ear. I didn't shoot because I didn't have a clear shot. It's actually a lot harder to shoot things while they're moving. The two monsters were in a death grip. I didn't want to waste a bullet shooting Pumpkinhead. I knew it would do nothing. The demon got the upper hand on the Dogman and flung him across the room. He landed a few feet from us, close enough that his blood sprayed us as he hit the wall, and we could smell the stink of wet dog coming off of him. Then It was back on its feet and tearing into Pumpkinhead. The demon let out a roar and slammed the Dogman into the ground, the beast letting out a whimper that sounded so much like an injured dog. Deep down, I kind of felt bad for it. Katie was still behind me but had crawled to the old woman. She gently placed her hand on the woman's arm, feeling for a pulse. Roger grabbed the rifle and tried to wrench it out of my arms. I wasn't expecting to be grabbed like that, but I managed to hold on as we tumbled to the floor just feet from the monsters. "Let go," he screamed in my face. I gritted my teeth and kicked at him, but it did no good. Roger released one hand and started pummeling me in the face. It shocked me enough that I loosened my grip on my weapon long enough for him to pry it from my hands. He stood up and kicked me in the side, then turned and started shooting the few rounds I had left into the Dogman. The thing let out a startled squeal as the last few rounds found a home in its midsection. It fell to its knees, and Pumpkinhead was on it, gripping its head in its hand, squeezing. But the Dogman wasn't dead yet. It kicked at the demon and pushed it back. It then latched onto its arm, shaking it like a dog with a piece of meat. The screams and howls in the room were deafening. Katie was beside me. She pulled me towards her, towards the old woman. She was awake and staring at us with sunken eyes that were black from the beating Roger gave her. She looked almost dead, and her breath was a terrible, painful rasp.
You must kill me to stop the demon.
She sputtered, blood leaking from her mouth. I'm not going to kill you. We're all getting out of here and going to a hospital, I yelled. She smiled slightly and coughed, then shook her head.
No, I'm not going anywhere, except to the afterlife with my family. I should have never have called down that demon. Shouldn't have put that stain on my soul. But now it's too late.
She coughed. Why would you help us? We're responsible for your grandson's death. I felt tears in my eyes as I spoke.
Because she's innocent. She reminds me of my own Katie.
The woman gestured to Katie.
If you kill me, it will die too.
Her eyes half closed and her breath was ragged, but she seemed to have lost consciousness again. Katie reached out and touched her gently. Behind us, the battle was coming to an end. The bullets had weakened the Dogman enough that it was on the ground, pinned under the weight of the larger demon. It thrashed and writhed, but there was no use. Pumpkinhead dug its claws into the beast's chest, slowly, agonizingly, as if it was enjoying the suffering it was causing. The Dogman thrashed, foam and spit leaking from its mouth as its eyes rolled back into its skull. It lay still with a final shudder. Now we can kill her. Roger stepped forward and brought the butt of the rifle down against the woman's skull. Once, twice, 3 times, with a sickening force that turned my stomach. Katie stumbled back and wept silently. I was numb to it now, but I had to turn away. Pumpkinhead let out a shriek and stumbled forward, reaching for Roger before it collapsed into the ground. It curled up tightly into a ball like a dead insect and lay still. It was close enough that I could see its human face and skin up close. I could smell the rot of grave dirt on its body, and it sent another spike of nausea through me. It's done now. Now we can get the fuck out of here, Roger said, tossing down the rifle and staring at each of us. You're a monster, Roger, I spat at him. Better an alive monster than a dead one, he spat back. He walked over to the fireplace and started pulling out logs using a long piece of iron and pushing them into the center of the cabin. We need to burn everything down. No one will believe us, Roger explained, tossing more wood on the pile he was making. No, you're just covering up the fact that you're a murderer, I shot at him. I stood up and picked up Katie. She was still shaking in my arms, and I knew she was in shock. But she went with me without protesting. We stepped carefully over the bodies of the monsters. The smoke in the cabin was already thick, and we coughed as we fell through the cabin door. Now we can all go home, Roger said, lingering at the cabin door looking back. Out of nowhere, a clawed hand reached out and grabbed Roger by the foot. The Dogman somehow was still alive. It reached forward and jerked the man backwards into the growing flames. Roger held onto the doorframe with one hand. His eyes were wide with terror as he looked at me pleadingly, screaming for help. But there was nothing I could do. The smoke and flames were already thick, and I had nothing to defend myself with. I was out of bullets, and Roger had let my gun burn up in the flames, destroying evidence. He squealed before he was pulled out of sight, back into those flames. The Dogman howled one last time, and Roger screamed. A few seconds later, there was nothing, just the crackling of wood from the cabin. We turned and fled that place as fast as we were able to. We eventually navigated our way back to the trucks and back home to our families. We explained that we had gotten lost and split up. We had no idea where the others were. The bodies were never found, not really. The cabin had burned hot enough and long enough that not even bones were left behind. It was probably for the best. The police concluded that my friends had sought refuge at the cabin and it had burned down due to an accident. They had no record of who lived in that house. It had been built illegally on public land. So, the names of Jethro and his grandmother were not known to the local sheriff, and now they would remain unknown. Katie is doing better, as am I. Therapy has helped a lot, but it'll never be really okay. As for me, I will never go hunting again. There's still so much I don't know about those woods, and there's a lot to fear now. Where there's one Dogman, there must be another, and another. It's not worth the risk, and besides that, I know that demons walk the earth, and there are some places that should remain hidden. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.